Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna start a new series, What If Naruto and Femutachi Were Abandoned by Konoha, Part 1. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Under the short pine tree, a single person wearing the Akatsuki's signature red cloud black cloak waited. A small purple frog with orange spots and a poof carrying a scroll showed up. The Akatsuki got on their knees to get the scroll. The scroll could be opened and read after the blood seal was broken with a thumb. "Do you know what's written on the scroll?" The frog nodded. "Hi, Jiraiya says it's time to clean up." The answer the summoned creature got was a slow nod. "Tell Jiraiya that I will be ready." 3 months later, one Konoha shinobi worked his way through a pile of paperwork in the Hokage's office. Tsunade sighed and looked at the blonde's head, feeling both guilty and angry. "I can't change your mind, can I?" Was not a question, it was a statement. Naruto's head went up. Most of the time, polished stones had bright, expressive blue eyes. I worked my tail off for this village. I almost killed myself to bring Sasuke back alive, and the village and council almost killed me for hurting their precious Uchiha traitor." He shook his head. "I can't take it anymore, Ba-chan. I gave and hoped that one day the village would see me as more than just the Kyuubi, but now I see that was a hopeless dream." "Like your dream to be Hokage?" Tsunade asked the Chunin. Only Naruto, out of all his friends, wasn't a Junin yet. This was mostly because the Konoha Council didn't agree with the recommendations to make him a Junin. Naruto gave a sad smile. "It's a fool's dream. If they can't see me after all I've done, I took down 2 Akatsuki all by myself, you know. And the council insisted on giving credit to those Anbu you sent because a Chunin could never beat an S-ranked Nukenin. And those jerks didn't show up until everything was over." He pinched the bridge of his nose. He straightened his back. "I trained for months to fight them, you know. To stay alive and bring Sasuke back. Well, Sasuke is back in Konoha, Orochimaru is dead, Itachi is thought to be dead, and Akatsuki doesn't exist anymore, so I don't see why I should stay." Tsunade ran around looking for anything. "But what about your friends? What about Hinata?" She knew that Naruto had started dating the Hyuga heiress a few months after he got back from his second training trip with Jiraiya. Tsunade began to shiver as the temperature in the room dropped. Naruto moved a little bit before he spoke. "I guess you don't know, but Hinata broke up with me," he said with a cruel grimace that made his lips look like a fake smile. "Her clan couldn't stand for her to keep hanging out with someone like me. Since that seems to be what most people in Konoha think, I'd rather take my tainted self away so they don't have to deal with me anymore." "Oh Naruto, Ba-chan, don't feel sorry for me. Sign the papers already and let me go." "But what if I let you travel for free?" Tsunade tried to bend the blonde. "Sorry. No, even though I have a travel pass, I am still tied to this village. I don't want to owe Konoha anything. I'm dying little by little here, Ba-chan." The man yelled as he clenched his fists. "If you don't let me go, I might go crazy and start killing like Jiraiya did." Tsunade looked at Naruto, the boy, no, the man, she loved like a little brother. Most shinobi had a counselor or at least friends they could talk to, but Naruto never did. He couldn't open up to the regular counselors, who looked down on him with disgust and loathing. The old rookies were just acquaintances, not trusted friends. The only person he told everything to was Jiraiya, because the Gamma Sanin put his. "Give me 2 hours, Tsunade said with a slow nod. "Send me Jiraiya as soon as you can." Naruto stood up and bowed his head. Then, in a swirl of air and leaves, he was gone. Tsunade took out a certain scroll and opened a bunch of thick files. They were about the attacks and attempts to kill Naruto Uzumaki by Konohans, who were never prosecuted or punished. Her anger and dislike grew. The best way for her to get revenge was to make sure her little brother got out of Konoha without the idiots on the council marking him as a Nukenin. She thought about the best way to do this with a sly smile on her lips. She was lost in her thoughts when someone greeted her with a smile. "You said the name Tsunadeheim." "Oh, Jiraiya. Yeah, I wanted to see you. Has Naruto talked to you?" Her face turned serious. "Concerning what he wants?" The Gamma Sanin's face went completely blank. "About giving up his shinobi status. Hi. And if you are smart and have good sense, you will help him. But he'll never be able to come back." Jiraiya stopped her by saying, "He doesn't want to." I can see for myself that he has no reason to. When you and I come back to Konoha after a long trip, we are well liked and sought after. Naruto is only hit and spat on, and his things are either stolen or destroyed. Suheim, he is just a human, and all humans have their limits. Tsunade nodded slowly. I get that, Jiraiya, but I don't want Naruto to be marked as a Nukenin and put in the bingo books. The council must not be able to go after him legally. Jiraiya's face became very serious. Take away his shinobi status and send him away. Get the daimyo to take away his citizenship. Don't worry about him, said Tsunade with wide eyes. He is already a citizen of honor in many other countries, including Wave and Spring. Even Suna if he needs it. But don't tell anyone until Naruto is out of Fire Country and the deal is done. Tsunade felt a chill go down her spine, but that is so final. I know. This is not what his father would want. This is not what Sensei would want. They're dead and can't say anything. Jiraiya was brutally honest. Frankly, I'm more worried about Naruto's sanity than old promises that were never kept or ones that shouldn't have been made. Seeing her hesitation, he softened. He will always call you Ba-chan, and he will never cut ties with Tsunade. Only with Konoha. Tsunade nodded. All right. I'll do it. Tsunade breathed a sigh of relief. Just the usual closing remarks and this bloody council meeting would be over. Godem-sama, there is something that worries me that hasn't been talked about yet. Tsunade looked at the sweaty fat civilian, some guild leader, with cool eyes and said, really? What is making you so worried? Tsunade's eyebrows arched when she heard, Uzumaki Naruto. Taking this as a sign to continue, the civilian said, he hasn't been seen in Konoha for a few weeks. Mission reports say that he hasn't taken any jobs that would take him outside of Konoha. No one knows anything about where he is. I'd like to make a motion to mark him as a Nukenin. Uzumaki Naruto is not important to this council. Honey's eyes got cold. But Godem. Naruto Uzumaki doesn't have anything to do with Konoha or Fire Country. I talked with the daimyo about it, and he agreed with me. Naruto has been stripped of his shinobi status and Fire Country citizenship. Her cold eyes stabbed each of her most vehement opponents. In the past, she had to be careful not to hurt her loved ones, but now she only cared about Jiraiya and Shizunes and they were not vulnerable to the council's schemes. Godem, you can't be serious. Hyuga Hiyashi stopped moving. You gave them. The daimyo agreed with my decision, Tsunade said with a smirk. I let the shinobi who was betrayed over and over by his own allies in this village leave with his honor and freedom still intact. He thought Sarutobi did a very bad thing when she gave in to the council's demands and turned a blind eye to the cruel way Naruto was treated as a child. The two of us agreed that it would be illegal and dishonorable to kill a loyal shinobi for the crime of being too strong, but neither of us wanted to force Naruto to stay in Konoha and risk him cracking under the constant hatred of the ignorant bigots who live there. If he ever gives in to the anger that any human in his position must be feeling at this point, he will be far more destructive than the Kyuubi because he has the mind, intelligence, and before going on, she took a long drink of water. Uzumaki Naruto is currently based out of Nami as a bounty hunter, and he has agreed to stay away from Konoha Shinobi and Fire Country. He has sworn he won't attack Konoha Shinobi or Fire Country civilians unless he or his is attacked first, and I trust his word more than I trust most of you. Her smile was more of a deathhead's grin. If he kills or hurts any Konoha Shinobi, it will be seen as a righteous kill because Konoha got in the way. It's a shame, but it's part of our way of life as shinobi. The smile grew into a full vengeance. Also, Princess Yuki of Snow Country, which is now called Spring Country, gave Naruto citizenship in her country and made him a royal liaison. She gave him diplomatic immunity, which is usually given to ambassadors. Any country that has a treaty with Spring has to respect that, and that includes us since the daimyo doesn't want to risk losing cheap food imports from Spring Country. When people realized what Godem's words really meant, their faces got a lot paler. Uzumaki Naruto was too far away for them to get to. They couldn't touch him or the Hokage and the daimyo would have put them to death for treason. Uzumaki could go to their enemies and sign up as a mercenary or a shinobi without them being able to stop him. Nara Shikaku shifted uneasily. Godem, you made a bad choice here. Oh, I agree, Shikaku. It's terrible for Konoha. We lose a powerhouse, a shinobi who killed two S-class Nukenins on his own, a shinobi who was completely devoted to Konoha, and the person who made me change my mind about becoming Hokage, but you know what? She leaned forward. She leaned back in her chair. I don't care. You messed up big time. If it comes back and bites Konoha in the behind, Well, who cares? If you're so scared, use your own money to hire shinobi, but don't expect them to come back, she said as she looked at her polished nails. Naruto is excellent. Nothing has ever been given to him in his whole life. He has always had to fight and shed blood, sweat, and tears to improve. In Konoha, no Chunin teacher or Junin bothered to teach him anything. He had to teach himself the basics that most academy students are taught. He did this by putting together pieces of information he found in different places or by watching other people. Unlike spoiled clan brats who had the full benefits of specialized teachers, clan techniques, and early training, one of the counselors said about Uchiha Sasuke. Several of the counselors winced at this jab, and the Godems seemed to relax just a little. There's nothing keeping him in Konoha. His first girlfriend broke up with him, and most people don't like him, so he'll never find another girlfriend and start a family. His friends have left him and only come to him when they need help. They never back him or his dreams. Even though he has done well, this council won't make him a Junin. He was able to bring back a traitor, who was quickly hired back and given a higher position than him, while he was fined for using too much force to protect his own life. Few people care about him, but those who do have their own lives and worries. Would you live in a village like that? Several of the clan leaders walked away with their heads down. Everyone knew it was wrong to reinstate the Uchiha after such a light punishment for such a serious crime, for punishing the one who stole the precious Sharingan Kekkei Genkai, but none of them had sided with the angry Godem. They didn't want to use their political power on something that didn't matter much to them. This is over, Tsunade said, shaking her head. If I find someone who gives orders about Naruto, even if he changes his mind, I will kill the person responsible, even if they are the clan leader. Cold eyes settled on Hyuga Hiyashi. Any shinobi who accepts such missions will not get any medical care from the Konoha doctors and will have to spend a month in Ibiki's care. Any medic nin who tries to help the shinobi in question will have his or her license taken away. All of them will have their chakra vessels sealed for 2 months, and they will have to do 6 months of D-class missions for free. Unlike Sarutobi Sensei, I will carry out this punishment, he said. The daimyo fully backs me on this, and don't think you can hide anything. Now that Akatsuki is gone, Jiraiya has decided to use his spying skills to find traitors and lawbreakers in Konoha. He is especially interested in finding anyone who would dare hurt his student, who is probably his only living student since he won't teach anyone else from Konoha. Naruto frowned at the sake he was drinking. It wasn't very good, and he would have to drink a lot of it for it to do anything. He found that it often worked to get his opponents and informants to think less of him. He had no idea what was taking so long for the freelancer Gameko had promised to send. Naruto knew he was good and that, with Kage Bunshin, he could easily make an army to fight any group of bandits or regular Nukenins. Unfortunately, the group he was looking for was like the Akatsuki in that it was made up of high-ranking ninja who were invited to join and had different skills. All experienced shinobi knew that Kage Bunshin were weak, and Naruto hadn't quite mastered the Hiraishin to be, as they say, all over the place. He couldn't do this job alone. He didn't know many people with the skills he needed who he could trust, so he had to go to Gameko, a person who specializes in bringing people together. Gameko sent a message with a date, time, and place a few days ago. He thought about the past few years as he waited. He was scared for the first few weeks after he left Konoha. They were waiting to see if the council had found a way to send Anbu after him. Or if a rich civilian with a grudge put a contract out on his life. Or if Ba-chan changed her mind, or had to, and gave permission for a Black Ops mission to kill him. After 3 months, he was able to calm down and start enjoying life. As an independent, going on bounty hunts was hard work because he had to do everything himself. Naruto came to rely a lot on his network of friends and contacts from all over the elemental countries. Naruto learned a lot from the hours he spent watching Jiraiya run his spy network. He used what he learned to make a similar web around himself. When he found out about smaller heads, he sold the information to other independent people who didn't have his information network. In this business, information and people were very important. As long as you knew what people were trying to accomplish, you could usually guess what they would do. Kuroakuma. This group. They didn't have any of Akatsuki's big plans. It made them less dangerous and more dangerous than the people who collected bijus. Too bad none of the hidden village's intelligence operations had noticed them. They had already caused a lot of trouble on a number of trade routes and in smaller economies. Their business was mostly run by 3 smart heads, which was a good thing. The body would die just like any other animal if all 3 heads were gone. The spider sent me to see you, Naruto-san. A quiet woman's voice was hard to hear over all the other noise. Naruto took a deep breath. She hadn't even caught his attention. Her chakra control was so good that she could have passed for a normal person. He would have thought she was a waitress if she hadn't had a faint scent of oil used to polish weapons. He slowly moved his head to the side and looked at her. She was about 4 feet away from him. A respectful distance that would give both sides just enough time to get out of the way if one of them decided to attack. If he had to describe her in a few words, Naruto would say, deadly and beautiful elegance. This would be a good way to describe her. Under the tight, well-worn brown leather armored clothes and boots, her body was slim and fit. Over that, she wore an olive green coat made of canvas that had been treated to repel water. Her weapon pouches were a lighter brown, and her weapon harnesses and belts were black. Naruto was sure that she had more to hide under the big coat. Naruto was sure she was very good because her clothes were dirty. The killer was her face. Its shape is almost a triangle, and its thin porcelain skin is stretched over thin, fragile bones. Black almond-shaped eyes with slanted black irises and dark brows that fly away. Long, silky strands of black hair fell out from the neat crown of braids that framed her face and wrapped around her head. He could see the steel senbon that held the braids together. He thought of someone when he saw her, but Naruto wasn't sure who. Oh well, he was going to figure it out eventually. Also, Operation Hydra was a bigger worry for him. What's your name? Naruto had given up on making friends on the spot. He didn't want to make a decision before reaching out. She put her head down. You can call me Habara. The local agent for Gameco can vouch for me. Naruto gave a short nod. Watanabe was a sneak, a coward, and a very bad liar. Naruto could literally tell when someone was lying because his Kyuubi senses were so much better than normal ones. In the weeks after he left Konoha, he found that his sensitivity had gotten a lot stronger. After meeting the fox, he decided that the furry creature wasn't so bad after all. He had agreed to make Naruto's body better enough so that channeling the dense red chakra wouldn't hurt him as much. All Naruto had to do was let the Yoko use his senses, so the Biju could get some sensory information and feel better. Of course, this meant that the fox often pushed him to sleep with every pretty girl so that he could feel the endorphins and pleasures. Naruto didn't really care. Women outside of Konoha thought he was very attractive. Since he was no longer loyal to Sakura and Hinata, there wasn't much stopping him from enjoying the pleasures of the flesh. He pushed the idea of sleeping with Habara out of his mind with all his might. She was going to work with him. If she was good, it could lead to a longer-term relationship, and Naruto wasn't going to mess around with someone who could hurt him badly. It would get better, but the pain wasn't worth it. He pushed himself off the stool carefully. Let's go for a walk, Habara-san. I need some fresh air. She didn't say anything, she just did what he told her to do. That was one thing she had going for her. When you were in a bad mood, most women were real B*TCHES. At least this one was done correctly. They both knew that small talk wasn't worth much. If they sparred, they would get to know each other better. Naruto had a feeling that he would be working with Habara for a long time. Naruto watched as his friend kept drinking. She had already drunk 2 jugs of sake on her own, and she was almost done with her third. The last job wasn't good. Child prostitution couldn't be made to look better, and for some reason, this really got to Habara. Probably something to do with women. In the months they worked together, they learned each other's limits, but Naruto didn't fool himself into thinking he knew everything about his partner. The blonde had to squint because the tavern wasn't very fancy. The soundproofing and sound-blocking jutsu barrier in their booth gave them privacy, so he asked the question that had been bothering him. Habara-chan, would you mind if I ask you a question? Ask away, Naruto-kun. She always insisted on using the affectionate ending, even though she never showed him in any other way that she cared about him. They liked each other and trusted each other, but neither of them could talk about the past. All they cared about was the present and the near future. Are you related to the Uchiha clan of Konoha? You look like a Teme. She calmed down. She asked, Teme? Uchiha Sasuke. Old teammate. Pampered brat and all-around jerk. Turned traitor and put a hole in my chest. Chased him for years because I promised. When I finally caught him, they closed me out and kicked me to the curb, Naruto said. Don't blame you if you're a Uchiha. It's not like you can choose your parents, you know. She looked away. Naruto saw 2 sparkling lines going down her cheek. Before he could say sorry and tell her she didn't have to say anything, she started talking. He was, she said, and her voice got rougher. She looked at him carefully out of the corner of her eye to see how he reacted. She said, he was a complete jerk. I was glad when Uchiha Itachi killed the clan. Naruto blinked. If you say so, he said, tapping his finger on the top of the table. I never really got Itachi. He didn't seem like the type to just snap. And his excuse, that he was trying to see how far he could go, was a load of crap. He had another reason. Habara blinked. What do you mean, Naruto-kun? Naruto drank his sake and thought for a while. Do you know anything about Itachi? Just that he was a genius who rose through the ranks to become an Anbu captain at the age of 13. At the age of 14, he killed his clan, leaving only his younger brother alive. He then joined Akatsuki, an organization that was collecting bijous. When Akatsuki was destroyed, he disappeared. Unlike most of his old allies, his body was never found. Naruto nodded. Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. But Itachi was one of the most uninterested people I'd ever met. He said he wanted to test his limits, but I don't think he would have slaughtered a clan of cheap copycats who'd been resting on their laurels for so long. He would have gone rogue, taunting Konoha by beating up every single Oinen and Anbu team sent against him. The Uchihas must have done something terrible for him to be so mad at them. What is the question? Habara didn't say anything for a while. Uchiha Itachi is the only one who can answer that question. Yeah. I suppose. He's probably hiding somewhere far away, which is too bad. It might be nice to fight with him without killing each other. Do you want to talk with him? How come? Itachi is a person who, like most of us, was probably dealt a bad hand. He likely did what he thought he had to do to stay alive. I just want to know what was so bad that he didn't feel bad about killing his own family. Only he can give you an answer to that. Yeah. So that's it for the night. Can you take care of your own needs? Habara made a soft sound like he was snorting. Of course, Naruto-kun. Naruto nodded and went to the bar to pay the bill and give the bartender some quiet instructions. Then he went to his room on the 3rd floor, where Habara always had the room next door. He took off all of his clothes and tossed them carelessly over a chair. He then jumped into bed, only wearing his boxers, and pulled the blanket over his body. A few hours later, he woke up with a jolt and a red chakra that burned away the effects of the alcohol on his body. There was an intruder nearby. Naruto-kun. It was Habara. Her chakra was moving all over the place, which was not like her at all. It was probably because she had been drinking. He watched as she took off her coat, then her close-fitting armored vest. She struggled with her boots before they too fell to the floor with 2 soft thumps. Then she swayed toward him. As she slowly made her way to him, she didn't walk with any force or control, and her whole body swayed a little bit out of control. Sharingan was active because she had lost control of her chakra. He was used to it now. He had been scared of it for a long time. He had only seen Sharingan in 2 faces, and both of them tried to kill him. Kakashi doesn't count because he never really used the full Sharingan against Naruto. Now, Sharingan meant control, competence, consistency, friendship, and companionship. Habara-chan. What's up? She was able to sit on the edge of the bed without falling off, but she wouldn't look at him. I have to tell you something, she said. After what seemed like forever, she lifted Sharingan's eyes to his blue ones. I am Itachi. Naruto stopped. What was she talking about? Itachi was a guy. He stared hard and thought about what his senses were telling him. She was telling the truth or she really believed it. But how could everyone have thought Itachi was a guy? Naruto's brain worked quickly. Okay, forget that question and focus on where she was coming from. Assume that Habara used to be the Nukenin Uchiha Itachi. Extrapolate. Everything changed and became a dazzling kaleidoscope before settling into a new pattern that was much more complete than the old one. It all made a crazy kind of sense, but going back how? When he saw that she was about to break, he moved closer, put his arms around her, and put her on his lap, tucking her head under his chin. Tell me about it all, Habara. I'll keep it to myself. And then she told him everything. Her earliest memories of growing up in Baron Barracks and being raised as an automaton. The regular medical checkups. The almost constant training. Going back to the Uchiha clan house just before Sasuke was born. Being pushed and driven through the academy and up the ranks. Having some memories erased when her controllers found out she was a girl. At the end, she was shaking so much and crying so hard that she could hardly talk. I knew I couldn't break the henge because it was a Fuin Jutsu, and Jiraiya was the only seals master I knew, so I joined Akatsuki. But after a few months, I realized I couldn't just run away and hide because they might actually be able to get the bijus, so I started giving Jiraiya information. A person who knew him well. Hi. Jiraiya broke the henge and sword oath not to say anything about Uchiha, Itachi, or Habara once things were coming to a close. I left then. Naruto sang softly to the woman as he gently rocked her in his arms. Jiraiya kept his promise. He didn't say anything to me or to anyone else. He didn't tell anyone. For a while, I was afraid he would tell the Godem. No, he has no faith in the council. He never tells Tsunade anything, he wants to stay secret. If you asked Ba-chan when she gets drunk, she would tell you right away. Jiraiya is the kind of person who is loyal to people. Also, from his point of view, the Uchiha clan got what they deserved for doing illegal experiments on children and abusing them. He doesn't like it when things are like that. Not after Orochimaru. Habara didn't say anything, but then he thought of something. What are you going to do? What are you saying? Do you want to go your own way? I can see why. Hush. To stay alive, you did what you had to. Just like me. From my point of view, everything is fine. Also, he teased, we make a pretty good team, and I'd hate for us to split up. Habara let out a choked laugh that turned into a real one. What could she say? He was right, after all. Habara frowned as she cleaned and polished her weapons while she waited for her lover and partner to come collect the bounties on their heads. Bara-chan, we're done here. The kunai was put back into the quick-release holster, and her equipment was put into a sealing scroll that went into her satchel. After 10 minutes, they were drinking sake that had been warmed by Kaiten jutsus in a bar. The kunoichi noticed Naruto's blank, faraway look. Did the clerk give you any grief? She asked as a joke. Then what makes you mad? Before he spoke, Naruto hesitated. Do you like this life? Having no ties or a stable place to live? Not owing anything to any village? Are you always going places? Habara stopped moving. She didn't complain about traveling because they didn't have a choice. They had to go where the work was. But it would be harder if she got pregnant, which she would sooner or later. All birth control methods had a chance of failing, and a Jinchuriki's sperm was probably more powerful than the average male's. Well, no, but why do you ask, Naruto-kun? Naruto ran a big hand through his tangled hair and said, interesting. I have been pondering the future. Bounty hunting is fine, but it would be better to have the support of a village. Most shinobi villages see ninjas as tools that can be used and thrown away. I won't take the chance of being treated that way again. I know. Don't worry, I fully get it. So, I think we should look at all the options to see which village would be best for us. After talking about it for a few days and looking at the facts, the two came to a decision. The best bet is Kumo. Habara said, they want a strong Kekkei Genkai and more attention from potential clients. The Sharingan and 2 skilled S-class ninja won't be able to stop them. However, their raikage is getting old. Naruto's nose wrinkled. We'll probably have to deal with his successor in a few years. Habara nodded slowly. That's true, but if we play our cards right, we can make sure that the next raikage is someone we like. Naruto bit his lip and said, I'm not sure how Kumo's government works. The council has a great deal of power in Konoha. This doesn't usually happen in Kumo, but the raikage is getting old and losing control, Habara said. He was able to protect Ni Yugito, the Jinchuriki of Nibi no Nekomata, when she was young and in her early years as a shinobi. There is even talk that she is one of the most likely candidates to be the next raikage. Sugoi. Naruto's eyes got bigger. They are really thinking about making her raikage? Habara nodded. Hi. Kumo has some strong ninja, but not many of them have the spark, drive, and strength to become kages. The clans have grown haughty and old. The raikage is dying for new life and new blood. This is the only reason he didn't stop the Gokiro clans from trying to take the Hyuga heiress for the Byakugan. Naruto slowly nodded. He could see where the raikages were coming from. He wanted his village to be strong and respected, even if it meant hurting a village that wasn't an ally. After all, that's what all shinobi villages did. Okay. You've convinced me, he said with a wide smile. Let's go see if the raikage is interested by paying him a little visit. The Yondaime raikage, Omada Hiroshi, shivered a little as he hunched over the newest paperwork in the cage tower. His old bones couldn't handle the biting cold of the tower, which was built on one of Kumo's high peaks. It was a strategic spot, but it was better for young, strong bodies. Carefully he put down his glass nib pen and turned his thoughts to his ever-present concern, his successor candidates. So far no clear candidates had caught his interest, though the clans continued to push their science. Hiroshi himself favored his ward, Niyugito, who was Jinchuriki to Nibi no Nekomata. Like the Sandyame Hokage, he took up his old job when his old successor and nephew died, sealing the Nibi inside his grandniece Yugito. Yugito was a great kunoichi and a great taiko on the battlefield, but she wasn't a leader. She didn't have the charisma to get people's attention or make them want to follow her. She was quiet and reserved. She was decisive and quick with orders in battle, but she tended to ignore what was going on around her as if it didn't matter. Not a good trait for a political leader or cage candidate. Even she admitted it. When a soft, polite cough broke the silence, he turned Kanai out. He was tense, but not too worried, because an assassin wouldn't have coughed. "Who are you?" Two figures came out of the darkness as the shadows fell away. One was a not too tall man with blonde spiky hair and a cloth half mask covering the lower half of his face. He wore green camo pants with pouches on both thighs, black combat boots, and a black turtleneck under a sand-colored trench coat. His partner, accomplice, was obviously a kunoichi, dressed in green cargo pants and black boots, a black. Even though neither of them had a hite, not even a scored one to show that they were nukenins, it was clear that they were well-trained shinobi, especially since they got into the Raikage Tower without setting off any alarms. They didn't want to kill either, they just wanted something. The Raikage felt a little less tense, so he filled his pipe, lit it, and took a long drag. "How can I help you?" When they looked at each other, the blonde man said, "It's more about what we can do for you, Raikage-sama." Rumi's eyes got very narrow. "Maybe you can start by telling me your names?" Before they answered, the two of them hesitated. "Naruto. Hibara." The Raikage perked. "Uzumaki Naruto? Of Konoha?" The blonde stiffened. "Once from Konoha," he said sharply, before forcing himself to calm down. "Excuse my rudeness, but I don't have many good memories of Konoha." Hiroshi nodded slowly. He had heard about how Konoha's Jinchuriki was treated. Fools. They did everything they could to make the boy angry. It was a miracle he hadn't snapped years ago like the Godem Kazekage Gie era. "Yes, I see. It was scary. Sarutobi was an idiot. He saw his village setting up an explosive tag, but he didn't stop them. Young man, you must have a strong will to get to where you are now with so little help or support." Naruto blinked and smiled. "Thank you. It's not a compliment," Hiroshi said, shaking his head. "The truth is that I have looked at the history of Jinchurikis. Those who were revered and respected did good work for their villages and often became great leaders. The records are full of stories about people who are hated and despised going crazy and killing people." He took a deep breath and said, "I didn't want that to happen to Yugito, so I was very strict about following any rules I made to protect her. In fact, I made many of the clans send their heirs to Yugito for special training. They grew up with her and treated her like any other high clan child. Whenever they heard bad things about her, they were quick to defend her. When they found out she was a Jinchuriki, they thought it was something minor, like a Kekai Genkai. All Kumo shinobi knows she is a strong kunoichi and inexperienced." Naruto put his head down. "I heard that from Jiraiya, the Gama Sanin. He said that Akatsuki never went after the Nibi because Kumo shinobi were quick to act." The Raikage gave a nod. When they were active, Yugito spent more time on missions that needed more than one squad. Akatsuki is good, but not against a group that works like a well-oiled machine, or a Jinchuriki like Nibi who can use 90% of a Biju's power without losing control. Naruto made a sad face, then nodded. "Nibi has power over those who have died." "Yes, Yugito can bring dead people back to life to fight for her. If the person died recently and a doctor is around to fix their wounds, she can force the soul back into the body." Naruto's eyes got very big. "Wow." The Raikage gave a grin. "Yes, wow. That makes her a favorite among Kumo's shinobi. All the divisions know to make sure she has a good medic on her team. But enough about Yugito. Tell me about Uzumaki Naruto. Why are you here?" Naruto took a quick look at his friend. "You might not know this, but I left Konoha with the blessing of the Godem and Daimyo. I now have dual citizenship with Wave and Spring Country. I was working as a bounty hunter when I met Hibara. After talking about it, we decided we wanted to join a hidden village, Kumo in particular." His blue eyes were level. "Hibara is almost unknown in most villages, but I can tell you she is an S-class kunoichi with skills that are better than mine in some ways." The Raikage was so surprised that he almost dropped his pipe. "Tell me, why Kumo? Is it for revenge?" Do you want to use Kumo as a shield to attack Konoha in the future? Naruto gave a head shake. No, Konoha holds grudges. I don't. You tried to make your village strong by kidnapping the Hyuga. Don't all villages destroy or steal the resources of others? Scrolls, jutsus, Kekai Genkais, weapons, shinobis. You had no treaty with Konoha. You were there to sign one, but you didn't. Hiroshi's eyes were full of thought as he looked at the young man. That's a very grown-up way of thinking. Naruto gave a shrug. Well, if I hated everyone who hurt me, I'd be full of nothing but bitterness. I've learned to let go and move on to survive. Besides, you are more deserving. You've treated Yugito better than Konoha ever did. I think I would have had a better childhood if I had grown up in Kumo. Hiroshi couldn't say anything because the truth was so bad. He cursed the long-dead Hokages, especially two of them who were to blame for this young man's pain. The private rumors were becoming more and more likely to be true. Uzumaki, could you help me out with something? Naruto was on edge. What? Take your mask off. Naruto blinked, but he did what he was told. The stretchy material around his neck showed off his chiseled features, including his long nose, wide mouth, and 3 faint lines around his mouth that looked like whiskers. A fidgety hand ran through the blonde hair's spiky strands as narrow eyes looked at the Raikage with a hint of suspicion. Omada Hiroshi gave a thoughtful nod and took another long drag from his cigarette. That makes sense.
Naruto blew up. What does it say? Why did the Yondaime Hokage choose you? Asked Hiroshi. I met Namikaze Minato during the treaty talks after the Konoha-Iwa Wars. He was a good man who was quick to forgive and always tried to see the best in others. He would never ask someone to make a sacrifice if he didn't have to. The clay pipe tapped on the heavy desk. You are very like him, like your father.
Naruto froze. Habara stared at Naruto. He didn't tell her. Is it true, Naruto-kun? Is Yondaime your father? Before Naruto turned to look straight into the eyes of the person he loved, his shoulders got stiff.
I have no proof. No birth certificate. No clan scrolls. No letters. Nothing but what I look like. Jiraiya said I probably am, but I wouldn't let him tell anyone, not even Tsunade Ba-chan. If you think the fools in Konoha would have believed us, you're on something. He laughed with a sharp barking sound. They would say that I stole the Yondaime's appearance, since foxes are tricksters and magicians. Hiroshi coughed in a sneaky way. It doesn't matter what Konoha says.
I know our archives have several blood samples from Konoha shinobi.
They were taken from the battlefield so our doctors could study them, he said. I'm sure we have a sample for Namikaze Minato. He sparred with my old successor, Yugito's uncle, Hiraiko, and Hiraiko cut him with a kusarigama, which drew blood. The blood sample would have been kept, he said with a sly smile. If it shows that he gave you life, you have every right to use the Namikaze name. Even if Konoha doesn't like it, no clan can stop you. Naruto wiped his eyes, which were filled with tears. Everyone in Konoha told him no. And here, a total stranger agreed that it might be true and was willing to help him prove it. He looked at Habara, who smiled and had a warm, understanding look in her usually cool eyes.
She said, I don't care if I marry Uzumaki Naruto or Namikaze Naruto. You are the same person, and I love you.
Naruto bowed his head for a moment and then straightened up with new determination. This proves my point, Raikage-sama. You are willing to look beyond the surface and think about things that most people wouldn't. It would be an honor to serve you as a Kumo nin.
Habara stirred. But we're a little worried about your successor, the Rokudame. Before we fully commit to Kumo, we'd like to meet him or her, she said with a shudder. We won't risk being forced to serve someone who doesn't deserve it. The seed of an idea grew. Hiroshi gave a slow smile. I don't know who will replace me, but Yugito seems like the best choice right now. Each person looked at the other. Habara spoke. Could we meet her? The Raikage knew he would lose them if he pushed too hard. The man would only help people he cared about, and the woman would stick with him. Trying to tie these two together would be like trying to chain the wind or tie lightning down. You could do it, but it wouldn't work.
Of course. First, let me make you two a set of visitors' papers. 2 months should give you enough time to decide.
He took out a few empty scrolls and started writing down the information for a visitor's pass. As he thought about what could happen, a slow smile spread across his face. They were looking for a place to start a family and put down roots. If a Jinchuriki, an S-class shinobi, had kids, they could do anything. This might be where he could get the new blood he was looking for. Shikamaru frowned as he looked at the cold food that was left from his dinner. The sauce was sticking to the meat that had been grilled. Ino shook her fist and said, "Eat up, Shikamaru, or I'll give your food to Choji." Shikamaru just gave his food to his friend Akamichi. "Go ahead and eat it, Choji. I'm not that hungry." Sakura was worried as she looked at the genius at making plans. In the past few months, the Nara had lost weight. "What's wrong, Shikamaru? You haven't been going out on missions, but you've lost so much weight."
The Junin from Konoha took a look at the Nara. At least once a month, they tried to get together for dinner. This time, Kiba, Neji, and Lee went on a mission to find something. After the scene he made the first and only time Ino tried to get him to join them, Sasuke was never asked again. Tenten took a close look at the Nara. Sakura is right. The next time you have to go out in the field, you'll pass out after just a few hours of running. Haven't you been training? Shikamaru shook his head. I haven't had time. I've been spending all my time going over intelligence reports from months ago, he said with a frown. Konoha is having trouble.
What do you mean? Shino didn't talk much, but when he did, he said what he meant. Shikamaru tapped his hands on the wooden table and tried to get his thoughts in order. Have you ever heard of aka Arashi, or Hanashin?
Sakura automatically shook. Who hasn't heard of Red Storm and Death Flower? Every Konoha shinobi who has met them has died, and we still don't know what they look like, where they come from, or anything else about them.
Shikamaru shook his head. Now we know. They are the best of the Kumo. Bolt. Eyes got bigger. Bolt was what Anbu meant in Kumo. Most of the time, their missions didn't make any waves. Aka Arashi is Bolt. Asked Ino. He couldn't believe it. I thought no one had ever lived through a meeting with the two of them. How do you know? Shikamaru answered bluntly. A scouting team doing reconnaissance had a branch house Hyuga with them. He saw the attack being used. It was like a hurricane of cutting winds and red energy that overloaded or cut everyone within a few hundred yards. Only those in the eye of the storm were safe. While he attacked from a distance, she attacked up close. Hanashin is clearly a kenjutsu and ninjutsu expert, a scalpel compared to aka Arashi's hammer.
I've been reading old reports where it wasn't clear who the enemy was. Many of the shinobi who were killed by unknown opponents were probably killed by this pair. Intelligence agents only found out the names recently, after the large-scale massacre where the Kira Arashi attacks were used.
Ino shook her head. I don't get it. Why isn't Kumo using the fact that they have two really good ninjas to get missions? They have Ino, Shikamaru said with serious eyes. Mostly in Iwa and other places where there are no shinobi villages. I don't know if your dad has been complaining, but Konoha has been losing some big regular merchant contracts. The people said that they had found another village that was more trustworthy. Most likely, it is Iwa or Kumo, based on what has been said. Choji gave a slow nod. Many merchants have said that. The reason is that Nami and Spring automatically raise the price of any goods that are going to Fire Country or Konoha. They've been offering discounts to merchants who hire shinobi from other hidden villages. Ino just stared at her. She knew prices had been going up lately, but she didn't know why. But why? Hinata answered with wet eyes as Sakura turned away, her mouth shaking. Because Naruto left Konoha, that's why. He became a citizen of both of them, and they don't like Konoha anymore. She looked down at her closed fist and said, I heard my father talk about it. Godem and the daimyo are very upset with Konoha. Naruto asked Tsunade-sama to send him away so he could leave without being marked as a Nukenin. Everyone was shocked. They knew Naruto had left, but they thought it was just for a long training trip. No one thought it was for good, but Naruto hadn't ridden back. Ino looked at Sakura and asked, Isn't that just a joke, forehead girl? Naruto said over and over that he wanted to be Hokage. He wasn't going to just leave. Sakura straightened her head and spoke, but her voice was thick with tears she hadn't shed yet. He left. He didn't say anything to anyone but Tsunade-sama or Jiraiya-sama. Even Ichiraka's Iruka-sensei, Tuchi-san, and Ayame-san didn't know. Then why? Tenten asked what everyone else was thinking. Why would he leave? I don't know, Sakura said, shaking her head. But Tsunade-sama stopped teaching me long before that. Her long bangs covered her eyes. Shizune-sama wouldn't tell me anything. I'm still a medic nin, but I learned from the hospital. No longer do I get any specialized training. Haven't done that in a few years. Shino thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "That makes sense." Everyone looked at him. "Tsunade-sama blames you and all of Konoha," someone said. In her mind, we are to blame for Naruto leaving. But we did nothing. Ino got very angry. Yes, that is it. Shikamaru's calm voice cut through the drama of the Yamanaka Kunoichi. We didn't do anything. We didn't ask how he was doing. We never spoke to him. We didn't know that he didn't like living in Konoha. Hell. We had no idea something was wrong. Only Hinata and Sakura, tell me, why didn't you two say anything? You and she should have known him the best. You were on his genin team, Sakura. Hinata, you used to date him. Hinata was the first to speak. I broke up with him, she said. Father did not like me dating him. He said he wasn't good enough, that he was a nobody. She quietly asked them to understand and help her. He was starting to respect me as a kunoichi I didn't want to lose. Shikamaru said with disgust, so you threw Naruto away. He then turned to Sakura and asked, what about you? What did you do or not do? Then he shook his head. No, you don't have to tell me. Your only goal was to get the Uchiha. You made Naruto promise. You didn't pay attention to him, but when you heard about Sasuke, you made Naruto go after the traitor. When he came back empty-handed, you yelled at him and called him a failure. Sakura pushed back her chair and ran away crying. Shikamaru looked at Ino and told her, don't say a fucking thing, Ino. I'm right, you know. Sakura didn't pay any attention to Naruto unless it was time to go after Sasuke. When Sasuke got back to Konoha, she threw Naruto away like a used tissue. Forget it, he said as he pushed his chair back and stood up, throwing his chopsticks down with a clank. I have no trouble understanding why Naruto left Konoha. No one here cared one bit about him. Not just us. The Konoha Council met again in the Hokage Tower for a more formal meeting. Godem-sama, what are you doing to get rid of aka Arashi and Hinashin? Tsunade looked at Hyuga Hiyashi and smiled meanly. None. She waited for the uproar of protests to stop before going on. All of the Anbu agents who were sent to stop the two of them have been killed. No one has lived to come back, get in touch, send a message, or do anything else. We would need to send at least 15 full squadrons to have a chance of getting rid of them. This would be an act of war, and Kumo would be able to respond openly. If they sent the pair against Konoha, the Yondaime Hokage would look like a weaker version of himself. We'd be the Iwa Nins, though. Their techniques and teamwork are so destructive that walls and storage silos can be brought down from half a mile away. I won't risk getting Konoha into a war that we aren't ready for. Most of the protesting stopped after that harsh reminder. The practical question was asked by Aburame Shibi, who asked, then what should we do? Tsunade answered straight out, avoidance. Nara Shikamaru has been looking at old reports where the opponents weren't clear-cut. A clear pattern has emerged. 35% of Junins killed in the past year with an unknown opponent were killed by aka Arashi or Hinashin. 80% of our shinobi's encounters with Kumo have ended in at least one death, and 40% have only had one survivor report. Kumo's shinobi training has been getting better, and even their Chunin teams are now dangerous to a skilled Konoha Junin. More and more of their jutsus are new or have never been seen before. Futen, Raiden, and Kaiten are all mixed together to make effects that our shinobi have never seen before. Few of them make it back to tell us what happened so we can make counters. Their attacks tear apart the typical Doton mudwall. Inochi shook his head and said, I don't know how these two elites got here without us noticing. Kumo hasn't made any good shinobi in a long time. Their Chunins haven't done well on any of the exams. Jiraiya has an idea, Tsunade said as she leaned back in her chair. They don't send their real best people to the Chunin exams, which are open to the public. They teach them in secret in Kumo, send them on quiet missions, and kill anyone who might see them. Aka Arashi and Hinashin are just the first to make a big deal about Kumo's debut. Most of the guard contracts we've lost have definitely gone to Kumo, she said with a snort and a shake of her head. Some unnamed Konohan people tried to change the merchants' minds by hiring shinobis to act like bandits. They were killed by the Chunin and Genin guards of Kumo. They were smart enough not to bring their Konoha Hidis with them. Everyone on the council looked at each other. They had come to this meeting to approve an S-class mission to kill aka Arashi and Hinashin, but now they realized there was a lot more to it than just killing two ninja. Shikaku sighed. I guess I'll just avoid it. Until we get better information, Tsunade quickly agreed. We need something we can use to track the target's pictures, profiles, names, Associates, teachers, students, anything. We can't just go to war with Kumo to kill just 2 ninjas when we don't know where they are or what they look like. No one could argue with that. It was hard to plan an assassination when you didn't even know what the target looked like under the porcelain mask. Omada Hiroshi smiled as he drank his own sake. He knew in his bones that this alliance would last. The last Tsukikage had been a war-loving barbarian. This young man was more calm, thoughtful, and practical. It helped that he didn't have a personal grudge against Konoha and the Yondaime Hokage. He was more interested in rebuilding. Nobunaga Dakuen couldn't help but smile as he sipped his warm sake. He had only been Tsuchikage for 10 years, and with the recent Auto mess and the Akatsuki Biju situation, he never expected to be negotiating a full-scale alliance and trade treaty. He especially didn't expect to be signing one with Kumo after what happened with Konoha. How did you do it, Hiroshi-san? Kumo hasn't done well in the last few Chunin exams, and now you make 2 elite S-class cars. His voice was full of respect. Your shinobi have become so much stronger. Doden jutsus usually work well against Raiden and Futen jutsus, but the ones your ninjas use are different. Hiroshi poured himself and Dakuen more sake. Mostly good luck, he said. I always stuck to what I thought was right. The Kamis were kind enough to send me 2 elites when I was old. Dakuen's eyes widened. 2 new cannons? He whispered, not believing it. Nope, said Hiroshi, shaking his head. One who was kicked out of his village because he couldn't stand to stay there. His partner has never been seen in any village. And you trust them? Dakuen sat up straight. 2 strangers? What if this was an attempt to get in at a high level? Hiroshi laughed and said, that's it, my dear Dakuen. This one would never be used to sneak into a place. Even if she is his partner, he is too open. Who is this treasure? This wonder. Hiroshi shook a bony finger and said, this one isn't a genius. He works hard and has enough balls for 10 squadrons, but he's not a genius, not in the way we define genius. He thinks outside the box, Hiroshi said with a sly smile. So did his father. Suspicion began to grow. What is his name? Hiroshi blinked and said, aka Arashi. Hanashin is the name of his partner, the Raikage said, which wasn't very helpful. Dakuen growled, his real name is Hiroshi-san. The Yondaime Raikage spoke up. Dakuen-san, I have chosen this man to be my successor, he said. People and shinobi who work for me back him. But I will understand if you choose to end the alliance because of him. His name is Namikaze Naruto. Namikaze Minato was his father. Dakuen fell back as if he had been hit, so Hiroshi kept going. Minato sealed the Kyuubi no Yoko inside his only son. Naruto Uzumaki was the name of the boy. Even though Konoha ignored, beat, and mistreated him, he still wanted to serve the Leaf. He was only a Chunin when he killed 2 S-class ninjas, and he almost died when he went to get Uchiha Sasuke to save the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai for Konoha. But they still didn't give him the rank of Junin, his father's name, or his heritage. The boy tried so hard, but all humans have limits, so he left. The one good thing the Godem Hokage did was banish him so the council couldn't mark him as a Nukenin. He left Fire Country and settled in Wave and Spring Country, where he has contacts. The Tsukikage put the pieces together. The merchant agrees to a deal. The Raikage gave a grin. Hi. Neither country owes Konoha anything. They like the boy more because he fought for them and not just for you. Dakuen was broken, and the boy's father killed Iwa Nin, but this happened when there was war, and it was clear that he was no longer loyal to Konoha. But still. Dakuen said in a neutral way, he is a Jinchuriki and has been treated badly. How can you be sure that he is not crazy? Minato was a seal's master, and if the boy hadn't gone crazy after all those years in Konoha, I don't see why he will now. Besides, he is happy and content. He has a wife, a child, and friends and comrades who trust and respect him. These are things he had been looking for his whole life, but never had. The Tsukikage slowly nodded her head. I can see that point of view. According to the information we had, the boy wanted respect and attention, which he never got in Konoha. Exactly. Dakuen shook his head and smiled. You're a lucky son of a B*TCH to get ready-made elites and a possible successor all at once. Hiroshi nodded solemnly. I burn incense twice a week. Sometimes the gods are cruel, but sometimes they are kind. Dakuen sighed. What about the new jutsus? They seem to be combos, but I don't understand how you found and trained so many dual affinities. Hiroshi smiled and shook his head. It's not just dual affinities. Two shinobi with complementary affinities work together to make their attacks stronger. This is called Naijutsu, and Naruto and Hibara were the first to use it when they were bounty hunters. As part of the alliance, Kumo is willing to teach Iwa Nin the basic ideas and some examples. Dakuin laughed at how funny it was. The son of the Yondaime Hokage becoming the Raikage and teaching Iwa Nin jutsus that could possibly destroy Konoha. I can't say for sure, but I'm almost certain the council will agree. The boy didn't hurt Iwa. His father and Konoha did. Plus, he's no longer from Konoha, but from Kumo, which is now one of our allies. Hiroshi put his sake bowl on the table and smiled. Kazekage has sent a message to Konoha, Hokage-sama. Tsunade stared up at the almost mask-like visage of Sabaku no Tamari, Suna's ambassador to Konoha. The Kunoichi took the job so that he could be near Nara Shikamaru. The relationship was no longer strong, but Tamari stayed. She took the scroll almost with trepidation and bit her thumb to get a drop of blood on the blood seal. She carefully opened the paper and read what was inside, and got pale. She looked at Tamari from above. Do you know what's written on the scroll? The mask broke in a few places. Hi, Suna is leaving the alliance. We will only be neutral with Konoha. Tsunade turned her head away. She knew why without having to ask. The Kazekage was Naruto's first friend and was very close to him. When he learned that Naruto had left Konoha and asked to be banished, he stopped caring about him. Why now? That was the only question. Is there a reason, other than the obvious, why Suna is leaving the alliance right now? Tamari hesitated, but then decided that answering wouldn't hurt. Spies from Konoha would soon find out. Iwa and Kumo have made a deal and asked Suna to join the Hokage herd. This news hit him hard. Jiaira says the Raikage and Tsukikage have no plans to attack Konoha. This is more of a trade and mutual defense deal, she said, tilting her head to one side. This is very good for Suna. As part of the deal, shinobis and techniques will be traded. The Raikage's successor pushed for this, saying that forming ties and sharing strength will help the alliance last. Tsunade put her eyes shut. She had fought with the council and tried to get Suna and her to train together and go on missions together, but the council had said no. Then her eyes opened. The Raikage's successor sounds like a very wise shinobi. Have you met him? Do you know his name? Tamari turned her head away. I haven't met him. Only Jiaira has, and he won't say anything about it, she said with a small frown. Rokudame is the only name Jiaira has ever used for him. Tsunade blinked away her tears. Rokudame. She had hoped that someone she loved like a little brother would get that title. He'll never do it again. When are you going to leave? Tamari gave an honest answer, in 2 days. Most of my stuff is already packed, and I've made plans to have some big purchases sent to Suna in a few weeks. I'm only staying to say goodbye to Shikamaru and the others. Tsunade nodded slowly. She smiled wider and said, very well. Tamari, I'll miss seeing you, and I'm sure Shikamaru and the others will, too. A few months later, the Godem Hokage was sipping her tea while waiting for the council to calm down. She had a headache that would not go away. All of them looked their age because of the stress of the past few months, and she wished that all of those jerks would lose a lot more hair and get a dozen wrinkles. She held on. They waited. Silence. Expectant eyes. I have the bad news from the Junin team that was sent to Kumo to protect the Fire Daimyo's diplomatic envoy. Several councilors and clan heads took a sip of the herbal tea made to heal ulcers. Before going on, Tsunade took a sip of her own tea. The daimyo wasn't totally honest with us. He said that the envoys he sent to Kumo were witnesses, but he didn't say what they were supposed to testify to. The tension grew until a civilian broke out. What? They got married. The Tsukikage married Ni Yugito, the Raikage's grandniece. This made the alliance between Iwa and Kumo even stronger. Shikaku looked sad. Ni Yugito. Why does that sound like a name I've heard before? She is Jinchuriki to Nibi no Nekomata and a very respected and honored kunoichi in Kumo. It was said that she was a candidate to be the next Raikage, but that is no longer the case, Tsunade answered bluntly. Inuzuka Sume wanted to know, is she reluctant? If that's the case, this marriage might not last, and the alliance might end. Tsunade turned her head away. I was hoping for the same thing, but no, she said as she looked to the shadows. Only Yuhi Kurenai from the Junin escort team was allowed to go with the daimyo's envoy to Kumo, where the wedding was held. The next day's afternoon, they were taken back to the border, where the rest of the Junin escorts were held. Kurenai will give her first-hand report, one question at a time, after she has finished her debriefing. Yuhi Kurenai's back stiffened as she stood up. She thought about what she wanted to say before giving her report. 2 squadrons of Kumo Junins and 1 of Iwa Junins stopped us at the border and pinned us down. They made it clear that only 1 Konoha nin would be allowed into Kumo, and they chose me because of how well I remember things. 1 group stayed at the border while the smaller group led us into Kumo. They did a very good job. No threats or bad words. The daimyo's envoy felt at ease with the pace that was set. When the ground was rough, the civilians were carried. The sheer cliff faces and gorges around Kumo make it hard to get to and keep people out. But Kumo has changed on the inside, and there is now energy and life. People were talking, shops were busy, and kids were playing. Most ninjas moved in pairs or groups of 4. We were taken to a high-class hotel that was full of foreigners. Some seemed to know what was happening, but no one was talking. I saw the Tsukikage talking with the Kazekage and a masked man, but I thought nothing of it. He looked to be Bolt and I assumed he was their liaison or honorary guard. At dinner time I found out the Tsukikage would be marrying the Reikage's grandniece, Ni Yugito. There were too many shinobi guards to do a recon, so I stayed in my room. The next day, I went for a short walk and saw the soon-to-be bride. She was talking with the Kazekage and the same man in a mask. She called them both brother and gave each one a hug. A few hours after that, the wedding took place. The masked man gave the bride to the Reikage, who was in charge of the wedding. The official witnesses were the Kazekage and the sister of the Tsukikage, Sango. From what I saw, the bride and groom have genuine respect and love for each other. They will try hard to make this marriage work. Everything I know about Nobunaga Dakuin says he hasn't had any serious relationships or girlfriends in the past few years. His first wife died during childbirth, and their daughter was stillborn. He doesn't have any children from any of his other relationships. The witnesses from Iwa are happy about the marriage and alliance. I listened in on some of the talk at the party. He is aka Arashi, the man in the mask. People in Kumo know that he is the Reikage's right hand, a highly skilled and respected Junin, and a Bolt agent. They also know that he is a Jinchuriki, but no one who knows what that means is saying. He is trusted by the Kazekage and Yugito, who call him brother. The next day, we were led back to the border, where the rest of the Junin guards were waiting. Kurenai closed her eyes and said, 3 highly respected and honored Jinchurikis were in or very close to the seats of power in 3 different hidden villages. This alliance depends on them. They won't be easy to get rid of, and the ties between them won't be easy to break. Shuza frowned and said, I don't get it. How can people trust and like Yugito so much? Didn't the Godem Reikage die when the Nibi was sealed inside her? People even feared Jieira. Suna chose him because he was strong. I don't know, Tsunade said, shaking her head. Neither does Kurenai. Does anyone know what this aka Arashi's Biju is? Jiraiya might, but he hasn't answered any of my letters, she said with a sour smile. Even if he does, don't count on him telling Konoha anything. Several counselors flinched when they heard that sharp reprimand. Hiyashi frowned. There were 3 Jinchurikis in positions of power and influence in 3 different countries that did not get along with Konoha. This isn't something good. Iwa, Kumo, and Suna they could change their minds and attack Konoha in the future. Tsunade made a face. A part of Anbu agreed, and they did something without my or this council's permission. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm happy to tell you that ANBU's NE division, which did a lot of illegal things, is no longer around. Every single NE Anbu that tried to get in the way of the treaty talks is now dead. In fact, Kumo sent a number of squadrons to find NE's bases outside of Konoha and destroyed them. Officially, Danzo died of a heart attack, but unofficially, the doctors think it was a new assassination technique called Raiden Jutsu, which overstimulates the heart and makes it look like a heart attack. Several Anbu and Junins who knew him and some who didn't died in unplanned encounters with Kumo nins in the weeks after. A most welcome gift from Kumo, she said with a death head smile. I need to write a letter to the Reikage thanking him for getting rid of those people who were bothering me. Honey stared at certain people and said, too bad they only took care of the shinobis. Several counselors flinched because they had been on Danzo's side and helped him. The shinobi on the council shook their heads. What Kumo had done was against the law, but it was surprising how complete and ruthless his response had been. Their intelligence operations must be very advanced to have found Ne, but Ne had been protected by groups on the Konoha's council. Shikaku sighed and tapped the table to get everyone's attention. It's clear. If we stay out of Kumo's way, They won't attack us, but if we get in the way of what they're doing, they won't think twice about killing us all. Tsunade nodded. Up until now, the only time we've met Kumo was in the field, when we were on opposite sides and trying to gather information. My advice is to stop hiding because it hasn't helped you at all. Several shinobi straightened their backs. What are you saying? Sume was interested. The Chunin exams are coming up. Read a scroll in front of Tsunade. This time, Kumo will be the place where they stay. We don't usually send teams of genin to Kumo or Iwa, but I think we should. Since the exams usually last at least a month, it will give us a good chance to see Kumo for ourselves. Shibi gave a thoughtful nod and said, that's a great idea. We can't send out too many teams of genin. But we should send those who are more likely to advance so that our Junin will have a reason to stay in Kumo. Aburame Shino, Haruno Sakura, and Hyuga Neji all have genin teams that should be ready, Tsunade said with a nod. My suggestion is to send each team an extra Junin and give those who do well one-on-one lessons. When I go to Kumo for the third exam, a few more people can come with me. Is that a good choice, Godem-sama? Hiyashi asked with a frown. You're the Hokage. And that's why I have to be there, Tsunade said with a snort. The Yondaime Reikage has hinted that he will name his replacement at the third exam. I want to see the new Rokudame in person so I can see who we will be fighting. Also, since so many daimyos and dignitaries are coming, it's unlikely that anyone will try to do anything. Most likely, Kumo will treat them the same way he treated Ne. No one could say anything in response. Uchiha Sasuke scowled as he walked through the old, winding streets of Kumo. Kumo was much older than Konoha, and it showed. He didn't understand why he was one of the 3 extra Junins sent for the Kumo Chunin exams. Kakashi was here, and he also had the Sharingan. He sighed. All 3 Konoha teams had passed the first exam, which was a basic recon and information gathering exercise. Each team was given a different Kumo Chunin to follow in a training room made to look like several blocks of a small town. They had to watch the target and get specific papers that the target either carried on them or hid in a hiding place that had to be found. Right now, the second exam was going on. Sasuke wondered from a distance how many would pass. In his first Chunin exams, the proctor, Mitarashi Anko, chose a test that cut the number of candidates in half. Each team had either a Heaven Scroll or an Earth Scroll. In order to pass, they had to get the scroll they didn't have from the competition and reach the tower with all members. He was distracted by a flash of gold, and his Sharingan eyes went to a blonde head with spiky, unruly hair. It was on a tall, broad-shouldered Kumo nin who was wearing gray camo pants, not shinobi sandals, a navy blue turtleneck, a green flak vest, and a hite tied around the right bicep. He was being chased by a girl in her early teens who had a Kumo hite tied around her arm. Namikaze-sama. Namikaze-sama. The blonde Kumo nin stopped and squatted down to look the genin in the eye. What is it, Katara? You should be with your team and your Junin senseis, right? Katara shook her head and said, Nyoko sensei and Isshin sensei gave us the day off. For the Chunin exam, they have things to do. But I have something to say to you. She held up a piece of paper that was folded. Namikaze quickly looked over the paper, then pulled a lead pencil out of one of his flak vest pockets and wrote a message on the same paper before giving it back to Katara. Katara, I need you to take this to the academy so that Yes, I know. I do this for you all the time. Namikaze smiled and ruffled the girl's hair. It's just your luck to live next door to me. You get to be my unpaid courier. But I meet all kinds of interesting people. I'll drop this off at the academy before target practice, Katara said with a grin. Then she ran off quickly. In an unexpected show of chakra control and strength, she jumped off the stones and ran towards a building. Her feet hit a brick for a split second, and then she started running along the wall, parallel to the ground. The blonde shinobi watched her run, then did the same thing, but much faster. Before Sasuke could react, he had disappeared somewhere in the maze of tall buildings. Namikaze. The name sounded familiar, but something about the shinobi reminded Sasuke of Naruto. The way his hair shone gold but was always a tangled mess. The way he treated the genin, trusting her to do what she said even when there was no Junin sensei around. As he walked back to the hostel where the group from Konoha had rooms, these were the main things on his mind. Konnichiwa Sasuke-kun. Come on, come with us. Since our Neji-san's room has a private sitting room, we are going to order lunch there. Sasuke winced when he heard his former genin teammate's happy voice, but he reluctantly went with Sakura to Neji's suite, which he shared with Shino. Sasuke shared a double room with Kakashi, and Sakura shared with Kurenai. Sasuke blinked and looked more closely. Tsunade, the Godem Hokage, was here with her assistant Shizune, Nara Shikamaru, Yamanaka Inochi, and Nara Shikaku. Godem-sama, you are here too early. Tsunade looked at the last remaining Uchiha. Since there was no sign of Itachi, he was the only one who could bring back the Uchiha clan, but he didn't seem to want to. Determined to stop her enemies, she had shot down all attempts to force him into marriage or at least agree to have council-selected surrogates have children who could use the Sharingan. Yes. I got a report that made me worry. I thought it would be best to get there early to avoid any misunderstandings. What kind of information? Sasuke asked. She looked like a cat playing with its prey. She gave a friendly smile and said, information about an old friend. Sasuke decided it was best to leave it alone and ate some of the food that Sakura had ordered for the group while he listened to the conversation. Sakura's team failed on the first day. One of her genins had fallen down a gorge and cut himself pretty badly, so he had to go to the hospital. The other two genins were resting, and everyone was hoping that both of the remaining teams would pass. Sasuke-kun, you look pretty distracted. Sasuke jerked back to the present and told himself, I was thinking. What about? Neji asked in a cool way. I met a Kumo shinobi on the street, Sasuke said with a frown. He was not Naruto, but he looked like him. A Kumo genin called him Namikaze. Shikamaru and Sakura, two of the older shinobi, stiffened, and Godaime's eyes grew sharp. Are you sure, Sasuke? He asked. He went by the name Namikaze? Positive. Sasuke blinked and frowned. She called him Namikaze-sama. Tsunade started to laugh, then laughed quietly. He did it. He did it for real. What do you mean, Godem-sama? Sakura asked her old teacher. Who is Namikaze? I thought the Yondaime Hokage had no family because he was an orphan. Godem-sama, Inochi said with caution, this is a secret. They don't need to know anything about. Shut up. Inochi, Tsunade smirked, his eyes gleaming with a desire to hunt. Oh no, Haruno, you are very wrong. Namikaze Minato's family was real. He had a child that he used as a Jinchuriki to save Konoha from the Kyuubi no Yoko. This child was his son. A son that Konoha and the people he trusted laughed at and betrayed. Sakura jerked back, and everyone went pale. Minato-sensei never married. He never had any kids, Kakashi said in a slow voice. No, you're wrong. He got married to Uzumaki Kushina, who was a shinobi from Uzi no Kuni who became an Anbu for Konoha. They didn't tell anyone about their relationship because Minato had a lot of enemies. When the Kyuubi attacked Konoha, he used his only child and heir to seal the Kyuubi away. He wanted Konoha to see his son Naruto as a hero before he died. But they didn't. Shikamaru could see everything. They thought he was a monster, as Kyuubi, and they treated him like Suna did to Jiraiya before the Oto-Suna invasion. He was the case cage before he met Naruto. Tsunade smiled, her face getting a little warmer. Correct, Shikamaru. I have no idea what Sarutobi-sensei was smoking, but he really messed up. He didn't protect Naruto or do what Minato had asked him to do in the end. He let the son of our greatest hero grow up in an orphanage where he was hated and where Konoha shinobi and civilians tried to kill him several times. I don't know how Naruto survived, how he grew up to be such a good young man, but he did. I guess the small acts of kindness he got from Iruka, the owners of the ramen stand, a few Anbu, and Sarutobi helped keep him sane. But after being betrayed by the person he called brother, ignored by his own Junin sensei, and used and dumped by his first crush, all of these things add up, you know. She looked at three faces in particular. After the council turned down his request to take the Junin exams for the 5th time, he decided to give up. He told me he wanted to leave Konoha, so I let him. I banished him so Konoha's council couldn't mark him as a Nukenin. I didn't want to force him to stay in a village that hated him, she said. If things had gone on, he would have gone crazy and used Jiraiya on all of us or tried to act like Itachi, and no one would have been able to stop him. He is a Jinchuriki, as you know. The Sannin who taught the Yondaime Hokage taught him. Naruto took out 2 S-class Nukenins from Akatsuki all by himself because the Anbu teams I sent to help him took their sweet time getting there. She glared at Kakashi, who was very pale and clenching and unclasping his hands to stop them from shaking. Shino let out a sharp breath. It explains so much. Tsunade smiled. Yes, it does. Please don't be afraid to talk to your parents or other elders about what they did. Only the Abarames and the Inuzukas in Konoha agreed with what I said about Naruto. They are the only ones in whom I have full faith. Shino bowed his head and said, "My clan knows what it's like to be hated and feared because of what we are, to be looked at as freaks." Shikamaru glared at his father and said, "I don't understand why you do what you do. In fact, I think it makes no sense and is messed up. If the rest of Konoha is like this, I think I'd like to be banished, too." Neji took a deep breath. As much as I don't like Naruto's choice of new village, I have to agree with Shikamaru. He stared blankly ahead. I told him he could never understand the pain and burden of being cursed by a seal, by destiny or fate or some power he had no control over. I was such a child. What I've been through isn't even close to what he's been through. Kurenai looked at her clenched fist. She hadn't paid much attention to the Jinchuriki because she thought he was just an annoyance that didn't matter. Boy, was she wrong. Tears fell as she realized what Konoha had done. We've sent the Yondaime's son away. Tsunade agreed with a smug smile, yes, you have. And now he has joined Kumo. She looked at Sasuke, who turned pale and turned away. We can't just leave it. Sakura shook her head. He doesn't belong here, he belongs in Konoha. Her tightly clenched fist shook. We should. She yelled as the Godem threw her former apprentice against the outer brick walls of the room, but not hard enough to make a hole. Tsunade's strong hands grabbed Sakura's throat and slammed the pink-haired Kunoichi against the wall. Sakura started to choke. Listen to me. You B*TCH. You can't touch Naruto. I told the council this, and I'm telling you and every other Konoha shinobi in Kumo the same thing. If I find out that someone is giving Naruto missions, I will execute that person.
I don't care if the mission is to kill him or to convince him to like Konoha. Any shinobi involved will not get any medical care from Konoha, will spend 1 month in Anbu torture and interrogation, will have his or her chakra vessels sealed for 2 months, and will have to do 6 months of D-class missions for free. Repeat offenders will be killed outright or have their vessels permanently sealed, and you're making me want to kill you right now. This law has already been enforced many times with the full support of the daimyo, so don't push me. The Hokage let go of the Kunoichi, and the younger woman fell to the ground on her bottom like a puppet whose strings had just been cut. The Hokage then glared at the stunned crowd and said, "Stay away from Naruto. Don't go up to him. Don't talk to him at all. If he comes up to you, things will be different. You've all done enough to him already. Leave him alone." In her hurry to leave, Godime ran to the door and literally ripped it off its hinges. Shikamaru slowly shook his head and said, "Shino, could you ask the clerk to send for a carpenter? The costs of the damage can be added to the bill." Sasuke then said, "We only have the word of the Godimes that Namikaze is Naruto." Shikamaru sighed and said, "If you want to lie to yourself, go ahead." He shook his head. The tactics used by Kumo ninjas, it kind of makes sense. What do you mean? Neji was curious. You've heard that Kumo's fame is growing, right? How have they become more well-known and gotten big merchant contracts? Everyone nodded. Naruto has friends everywhere, and he's been with Jiraiya all over the elemental countries. Tazuna named the bridge in Wave Country after him, Sasuke said. The Great Bridge of Naruto. And in Snow Country, Princess Yuki. Those are the biggest two. Naruto probably has a lot more friends in places like Jiraiya and in other countries as well. If they like and trust him, they will also like and trust Kumo. But what about Kumo's better fighting skills? The new move, aka Arashi and Hanishin. Neji was interested. It could be that the Yondaime Raikage has a plan with more than one part. Shikamaru said, but we can't do anything about Naruto. He is in charge of trade and economic growth, while aka Arashi and Hanishin run field operations and other unknown people work on training and R&D. Since I don't want my chakra vessels sealed, I think we should focus on aka Arashi and Hanishin. Everyone gave a reluctant yes, even though some people had their own plans. The people from Konoha were very quiet as they watched the last of the Genins leave the Badlands and make their way to the Examiner's Outpost, a barracks-style house where the Junin senseis and examiners were waiting. One of the examiners was a pregnant woman who was given a lot of respect and deference. She was wearing a sky-blue maternity tunic that reached her thighs and navy blue hakamas. Silver thread was used to make tiny crescent moons and spirals on both clothes. She wore black combat boots and carried a naginata in a quick-release harness across her back, just like a lot of Kumo ninjas. Her weapon pouches and kits were slung across her front and over her belly in the opposite direction. She wrapped her hite around the left side of her arm. Even though she was big and pregnant, she moved with the grace and control of a fighter. It was strange to see a kunoichi in his or her current condition still working as an examiner. As she moved, men looked at her and were interested. From the back, you couldn't tell that she was in a bad way, all you could see was her slim, shapely body. When she turned to the side, it was her beautiful face that caught the eye. Skin as pale as porcelain, with fine, silky black hair twisted into an elegant knot and held in place with chopsticks and sanbons. Cool, liquid black eyes set under delicately arched brows. Habara-sama, teams from Konoha and Iwa have seen the last two genins. Habara turned her head slightly. Good. Make sure all the wounds are taken care of and the scrolls are checked. How many days have passed so far? Her voice was low and throaty. 12 teams. 5 from Kumo, 1 from Konoha, 2 from Iwa, 1 from Kusa, 1 from Mizu, and 2 from Suna. Habara gave a small frown. I'm surprised and impressed, because sensing and tracking chakras are usually more advanced skills. There is a trick to it, Habara-sama. Once a few people got it, the rest did, too. That's right. Once the deadline has passed, call the genins and tell them which teams are moving on to the next level. The next stage will be in 2 weeks. She walked off the overhang of the barracks and toward a Kumo Junin who answered her soft words. They walked away quickly but steadily. Neji wanted to know, who is she? The Kumo Junin examiner who was standing nearby took a quick look at the Hyuga and grinned. So Konoha liked Habara-sama, that's too bad for them. That's Habara-sama. She is one of our best kunoichis. Neji gave the cocky Kumo shinobi a hard look. She is pregnant. You are letting her risk her health and the health of her child in a place that could be dangerous. Toshinoko Iori laughed for a long time and out loud before he could speak. No one, and I mean no one, tells Habara-sama what to do. She is a force of nature, and everyone in Kumo knows better than to attack her. If an outsider is stupid enough, Iori shrugged. She would be the last thing an idiot would worry about. Neji frowned, but he didn't say anything. Habara was definitely one of these new Kumo elites. I hoped that someone else could learn more about her. Maybe from a citizen. Sasuke sighed as he walked through the market in Kumos. The sculptures made of glass and crystal were of a very high quality. He had spent part of the morning watching some retired Kumo shinobi use chakra control, futon jutsu, and kaiden jutsu to make works of art out of thin, fragile materials. His senses spiked. He moved out of the way by moving his feet quickly, but the small shape still ran into the back of his legs. The boy had also tried to stay away from him. Atei. The small figure fell on his butt and almost bounced back up. The small black head turned to look at Sasuke's. Gomen Nasai Shinobi-san. When Sasuke looked into the Sharingan's eyes, he froze. In the left eye, 1 tomo spun, and in the right eye, 2 tomos did. The boy seemed to be between 5 and 6 years old. No Uchiha had ever turned on the Sharingan when they were so young. When the boy saw the Konoha Hite, he tensed up and scrambled away on his bottom. Suddenly, he turned around, jumped to his feet, and ran away. Then Sasuke figured out what was going on. Stop. He ran after the child, who was surprisingly quick. The brat was taking full advantage of the fact that he knew the alleys and narrow side roads like the back of his hand. Wait, just tell me your name. The boy didn't listen and kept dodging and running. He yelled, Ka-san, and ran right to one of the workshops. Ka-san. The rush of killing intent almost made Sasuke freeze. He barely avoided getting stabbed by a very skilled and fast nin who threw a kusarigama at him. The weapon was pulled back by giving the chain a sharp pull. A kunoichi moved between him and the boy and caught the weapon. As he looked at her, Sasuke froze. Uchiha has delicate features, like a face that is almost triangular, black eyes set under brows with wings, and silky black hair that is tied into a knot with wooden chopsticks and steel sanbons. He saw her move up on the balls of her feet so she was ready to throw her weapon if he moved. She looked at him like she would a snake, a dangerous predator. Her face was cold and almost like a mask. Sasuke couldn't help but look at the boy who was holding on to her navy blue hakamas. Next up, He almost threw up when he realized something he hadn't noticed at first. She was pregnant, and she was almost full term based on how her tunic caught around her round bump. He ran away quickly with his hands up. If she was Uchiha and the boy was her son, Sasuke didn't want to accidentally kill one of his own family members. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. She turned her head sideways. Yes, I know. She gave him a familiar Uchiha smirk when she saw how surprised he was. Do you think that there wouldn't be files on foreigners in Kumo? Sasuke kept his attention on One Piece. You are a Kumo kunoichi. She just looked at him. Sasuke felt his hands shaking, so he squeezed them together to stop them. The Uchihas have always been shinobi from Konoha. She laughed. The jerk who had me was a Uchiha, but neither I, my husband, nor my son are. We are all from Kumo and are ninjas. Sasuke stilled. He had never thought that this could happen. An Uchiha who had a casual relationship with a person who didn't live in Fire Country. A daughter who grew up without a father or clan was probably looked down on and mocked until a Kumo nin saw that she had Kekkei Genkai and paid for her to go to the local academy and get the right training. Something in him stopped. She was a Uchiha no matter what, and she, her son, and her children all had the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai. He said in a neutral way, "Your son will need training to master the Sharingan." She gave a snort and turned on the Kekkei Genkai on her own. In each eye, 3 tomos were spinning. I'll teach them, and their father will help a lot. He's great at coming up with new techniques and ways to train. We don't need you, and we don't need Konoha. Sasuke was shocked by the total rejection. He had a vague idea that a group of Kumo nin were getting closer. Habara-sama, is this Konoha nin bothering you? The captain of the patrol squad asked. Habara, a female Uchiha, laughed and turned away. She put one hand on her son's shoulder and led him away gently. Not really, but Uchiha-san seems to be a little lost. Please make sure he gets back to his hostel safely. Of course. Sasuke did not protest. If he started a fight, he and the other people from Konoha would probably be kicked out of the Chunin exams. On top of that, he had a name. By the time Sasuke was done, the whole group was frozen and shocked. The Godime was worried, to say the least. A relationship that wasn't supposed to happen was one thing, but a child that wasn't taken in, which showed that the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai was clearly out of Konoha's control, would make the council very angry. Neji looked very hard at Sasuke. You said that her name is Habara. Hi. Neji gave Shino a quick look. Neji said, Habara was the name of the kunoichi who told the second stage examiners what to do. She was also pregnant and sounds like you, but she never used her Sharingan around us. Shino murmured, the Kumo ninja respect her skills, even though she is pregnant. They said that anyone who attacked her would be sorry for being so stupid. Shikamaru frowned as he thought about what he had just learned. He pinched the bridge of his nose and said, she is definitely one of these elites that Kumo has been sending out. That explains why so many of our shinobi were killed. They were up against a Sharingan mistress who was probably a prodigy. Kurenai looked at everyone. We can't just let Kumo have the Sharingan Kekkei Genkai, so what are we going to do? Tsunade laughed in an annoying way. Let them have it. They already have it. The only way to stop them is to kill Habara and any children she might have. No. Sasuke hit the low coffee table with his clenched fists. I'm not going to let you, he said. Then, his own Sharingan turned on and swirled into the Mangekyo. Tsunade was not afraid to look into his eyes. That's what the Konoha's council will want, and that's what they'll try to get if I don't get support for what I want. Sasuke took a sharp breath in. His eyes went down toward the Sharingan. I won't let it happen. If I find out that Konoha ordered the murder of my only living relatives, I'll leave. Kakashi coughed in a sneaky way. Why doesn't one of the kunoichis here talk to Habara-san? If she had a reason to move, she might be willing to do so. Sasuke snorted. You didn't hear her, Kakashi. She hates Konoha. She'd rather spit on us than have anything to do with us. Kakashi shrugged. Maybe. But if we try, we might get a better idea of what makes her tick. If we know who or what she hates about Konoha, we might be able to take steps. He trailed off knowingly. All of the people looked at Kurenai. The Genjutsu mistress stiffened and then sagged when she saw everyone looking at her. Okay. I'll try to talk to her, but I'll need help finding her, she said as she looked around. Shino woke up. My Kike can smell her, so they can find her. Kurenai nodded slowly. Okay. We'll start tomorrow after breakfast. The rest of you should find out more about aka Arashi and Hanishin while training the Genins. The third exam is coming up, and it's a one-on-one fight, so they'll need the practice. Kurenai frowned as she saw the pregnant woman and the craftsman talk about the price. From the things he had on the walls and under the glass counters, it was clear that she was ordering some kind of weapon. She walked into the store and looked at the kunai on display with a calm air. With tails of wire, they were a little different. Were they meant to be used alongside a Raiden Jutsu? What can I do for you, Yuhi-san? Kurenai carefully looked up into the younger Kunoichi's neutral porcelain mask. Kurenai felt a pang of longing. She missed her own son, who was an academy student and looked after by Yumino Iruka while she was on missions. I was just wondering if we could talk. Habara's eyebrows went up. Can we talk? I don't have much time, but if you want, we can talk while I go get my son. Kurenai followed the Kumo Kunoichi, Shino not far behind. She was glad she hadn't been stopped in her tracks. Kurenai tried to make sense of what they had learned about Habara so far. No idea about last name. Unknown husband. Unknown son. When personal information about her was shared without her permission, she was very upset and angry. Most of her fellow soldiers were completely scared or awed by her. Only her husband and a few other high-class people could beat her. She could easily pass for a Junin, even when she was very pregnant. She was funny in a cruel way, and she worked hard to get what she wanted. Kurenai finally chose to take the first step. Why do you hate Konoha so much? Habara answered quickly, because Konoha is full of arrogant bigots who put too much importance on bloodlines and not enough on skills. Kurenai jerked back. That's not true. Many ninja come from clans that aren't shinobi and don't have Kekai Genkais. I worked hard to become an expert in Genjutsu. Habara looked at the older Kunoichi with eyes that told him something. Who are you trying to fool? Me or yourself? Konoha pigeonholes its shinobi from a very young age and never factors in growth unless it is truly exponential. You showed promise in Genjutsu, so you were trained for that field. You were never encouraged to expand your Kenjutsu or Ninjutsu beyond the basics. Even what you do practice is heavily laced with Genjutsu. She threw her head back. We feel different here in Kumo. Kurenai thought about how an outsider would see things. Specialization was important, but too much of it could be dangerous. Was that why Kumo beat Konoha in most of their fights in the past? Because the ninja of Konoha weren't able to adapt to new situations. The master of Genjutsu bit her lip. Uzumaki Naruto was the master of being unpredictable. If he were here, he could change this Kunoichi's mind, just like he changed Tsunade-sama's mind about being Hokage, Yuki-sama's mind about becoming a leader, and dozens of other people's minds since he became a genin. But he wasn't, and he never would be, because no one had the guts to stand up to the villagers, go against the council, and support the Hokage. Now they were in trouble, and it was all their fault. She had to try, though. For her village. She carefully chose to try something different. Habara-san, I'm not sure if you know about the Uchiha massacre. One shinobi killed almost every Uchiha in Konoha. He is thought to be dead, but you should know that S-class ninjas are very hard to kill. He's already killed everyone but his brother. If he finds out about you and your children, Kurenai trailed off. And was shocked by how amused Habara's face looked. Habara said, if you're talking about Uchiha Itachi, I have no worries about him. We've met and we know each other. He wanted to destroy the Uchiha clan of Konoha, not the Sharingan Kekai Genkei. Then her face became happier. Here we are. Kurenai followed the younger woman into a crafter's shop through a trade entrance. The narrow corridor led past a few furnaces and smithies and into an enclosed courtyard with open air. In the middle of the courtyard, a Doden Jutsu had made a huge stone block out of granite. A long way away, there was an older man with a leather apron that showed he was a craftsman. He was on his knees next to a little boy who was wearing olive green shorts, black boots, and a white t-shirt with random navy blue spirals and crescent moons on it. The child couldn't have been older than 5, he was just about old enough to start at the academy. He was testing the range of his fingerless, spandex and metal mesh reinforced fighting gloves. They were made to order because there aren't many kids who need gloves that can take damage and channel chakra. Habara smiled warmly. Have you tried on your new gloves yet, Ryuchi? The cute, round face got happier. Hello, Ka-san. I think I can use these gloves to do the new move I was trying to learn. Habara gave a reassuring nod. Why don't you show me? Even if it doesn't work, it might give you some new ideas. Maybe too-san has some suggestions. Ryuchi gave a firm nod and then shut his eyes. When he opened his eyes, they were blood red and his Sharingan was active, with one Tomo in his left eye and two in his right. Kurenai watched as the boy moved away from him and turned to face the rock. Then he focused, keeping his hands close to his sides with his fingers slightly bent into claws. Chakra gathered around each hand, with the faintly purple energy being more concentrated at the back of each finger and then getting weaker as it went down to each fingertip. The boy then cut and scratched the air in front of him. Two purple energy blades formed and flew toward the boulder. When they hit, they cut off big chunks before dissipating. Kurenai gasped. Shino's eyes got very big. The craftsman beamed with pride. Habara made a small crease on her forehead and frowned. The Kunoichi mother-to-be walked up to her son and put her hand on his shoulder. It was a statement. Those chakra blades are not wind blades. The boy moved his head no. I got the idea when I saw Yugito Boss-san practice using Nibi's claws. Habara had a laugh. Do you think it's something that other people can do or that you can teach them to do? Ryuchi looked sad. He was honest and said, I don't know. Takeo-san had to make me a lot of wire and mesh gloves before we found a design that worked for me. It might be different for everyone, depending on their preferences and chakra levels. Habara nodded. But this is a good start. We'll show your dad your project. I hope you've been taking good notes, she said sternly. The boy looked like he was mad. Ka-san, do you think I'm a beginner? The first thing you and Tu-san taught me to do was to take notes. Takeo had a laugh. He's right, Habara-sama. He's kept a detailed record of all the past designs that didn't work, so we didn't make the same mistakes again. I also have some ideas about different materials that might be stronger for future production. Habara messed with the boy's hair and pulled him close to her leg. In her advanced age, it was hard for her to crouch, but she never stopped showing how much she cared. He had taught her how to do it. Kurenai saw the little boy tightly hug his mother's leg before reaching up to pat her round belly and standing on his tiptoes to press his ear against the lower curve. When Habara looked at the Konoha ninjas, all of his love and warmth for them left him. This is my child, my son, and I will protect him. I will never trust Konoha with his safety because you will let him be used and abused without caring about his health or happiness. You've let it happen to so many of your prodigies and geniuses. I will never trust such unworthy weak-spined two-faced cowards to protect my child. Tell that to your Hokage. And most of all, tell that to your council. My family will never step foot in. Red turned black as her Sharingan turned on and put the two Konoha ninja in a weak but hard to break genjutsu. When Kurenai finally woke up from the dream, his mother and son were gone. Takeo, a craftsman, was the only one in the courtyard. He was cleaning up the pieces of rock around the test boulder. When he saw the Konoha nin come back to the now, he laughed. Habara-sama left with Ryuchi-kun. I guess she's had enough of you too. Forget any plans you had, because she hates Konoha so much. Kurenai and Shino had to go back to the hostel and report what happened. She hates Konoha. I would strongly discourage any plan to kidnap her. She will come down like the Shinigami on the person who did it. If she feels cornered, the streets will run with blood, Kurenai said. She is an elite kunoichi and a mother. An angry woman does not forgive or forget. Men shook their heads and nodded. Shikamaru took a big sigh. Bad news just kept coming. When would it end? Shikamaru was sure that it wouldn't. Neji was a little bit worried. This boy is a genius, a prodigy. From what we heard, yes. He came up with the theory, designed the gloves, and tried out different patterns, Shino said softly. I think the wires are made to channel the chakra in a certain way, like hand seals. And this is his most recent work, Kurenai said with a sigh. He has done enough that his parents have taught him how to keep good records and how to take his ideas seriously enough to pay for the development costs. Takeo, the craftsman, was quite comfortable taking orders from a child. It's like he's done it before. Sasuke shut his eyes very tight. He is a genius and a jutsu developer. He uses the Sharingan to see how the chakra flows and makes changes to get the effect he wants. Tsunade drank her herbal tea quickly, feeling very happy that she had a lot of the special mix. She was going to need something to help her relax and fall asleep. Still, they had no idea who the new Rokudaime Raikage was. She stood out to Sasuke's. I don't know what we're going to do, Uchiha. If the boy is doing this on a whim with little formal training, imagine what he can do when he's older and has the advice and training of masters. When the council finds out, and they will insist on kidnapping or killing Ryuchi. This is going to be a very expensive and pointless effort. His mother and Kumo will not take this lying down. Sasuke's face was sadder than I expected. I know Godaime-sama. I'm starting to see. I just hope the new Raikage will be someone the council will think twice about attacking. If he takes Ryuchi under his personal protection, any Konoha assassination missions will be very expensive. Tsunade slowly nodded and smiled with a warmer, more honest smile. You're right, Sasuke. Before I leave Kumo, I'll talk to the Raikage and give him some clues. Sasuke said, yes, and then closed his eyes to stop crying. His family was still alive. Even though the name was forgotten, the bloodline grew and stayed strong. Only in Konoha did he wish it was blooming. Kurenai frowned as she watched the Genins wait for their names to be called in the candidate section. Unlike the Konoha third stage exam, the matchups were not known ahead of time. The Genins had to be ready for anyone who came against them. Shino and Neji were down there with all the other Genins and Junin senseis. The Godaime was with the other Kages and Daimyos in the area for important people. Shikamaru had just joined the Konoha group, so Kurenai looked at him. Have you heard of anything? Shikamaru shook his head. They're just talking small talk. The Raikage is a coy jerk. He's keeping the information to himself. He probably wants to make a big show. They haven't even announced the matchups. I thought Shizune could keep track of things for the Hokage, so I'm here. Have you heard anything about the elites? Head shakes in a bad way. No one is talking, and regular people don't know what's going on. It's normal for Black Ops to keep identities secret. Shish. Sakura hissed. It's the Raikage talking. Omada Hiroshi couldn't stop the smile of happiness that spread across his face. The Mizukage, Moroshi Izuku, asked the question that was on everyone's mind. Who is this successor that you are so happy about? The Yondaime Raikage laughed as he noticed Konoha's interest. Oh, I have every right to be happy with my choice of successor, Izuku-san. He has a very high profile and skill level. In fact, some would say he's better than the average Kage, and I would have to agree. Everyone looked at him funny when he said that. Give it some time, and you'll see what I mean. Tsunade frowned as she picked up on the subtleties and sureness. This Rokudaime was a big deal, someone who made a difference, but who? Who belongs to the new elites? The Raikage became stiff. The third exam is now starting. A thin blonde man came out of the rooms built under the stadium seats through a door that opened in the pit below. His long legs and slim hips were emphasized by the durable material of his slightly baggy gray cargo pants, which faded into the standard black combat boots that most Kumo elites liked to wear. He wore a blue t-shirt with short sleeves that showed off his sculpted torso and broad shoulders. The Kumo Hite was on the left shoulder. From his bicep to the backs of his wrists, his tanned arms were covered with intricate seals in yellow, lilac, red, blue, and brown. Everyone thought he might have more tattoos hidden under his clothes. His messy, uneven bangs reached his shoulders, and his blonde hair spiked around his face, framing his tanned, chiseled features that were definitely masculine. Long, straight brows sit above blue eyes that look like almonds and look right into you. A thin, aquiline nose, a wide, passionate mouth with three thin white lines around it, a clear jawline, and a strong, corded throat. Namikaze-sama. The quiet whisper echoed around the stadium, getting louder and louder as it went. It's Namikaze-sama. Namikaze-sama. It's him. Oh, Kami-sama. It's Namikaze Naruto. I can't believe he is the third examiner. The Konoha ninjas stopped and stared at the blonde as he smiled and waved his hand. They saw and heard how much the once Konoha nin was loved, admired, and respected. He hasn't taken any genin teams or apprentices. My brother is in the academy, and he wants to be his student. A few years ago, my cousin was in his second squadron. Tuga told me that on the field, he is Tushin. Absolute destruction with god-like control and stamina. That makes sense, since he is a Jinchuriki just like Yugito-sama. Don't be an idiot. He's like that even before he uses the tails. When he draws on the Biju, nothing can stop him. Did he ever get out of hand? Not against allies, because he always knows who is on his side. I once saw him go 6 tails. He was restless like any other berserker, but she was able to calm him down quickly. Knowing how to laugh. How could she not? She is his wife, his match, his mate. He doesn't know how much I respect him for being brave enough to sleep with and marry her. She's a cold piece of work. The tone was full of respect and admiration. Don't be around him, said the Leer. You haven't seen the two after they finish a high-level mission because they don't wait for a safer base or private rooms or tents. A rueful chuckle. Trust me, the two of them could stay up all night and wake up the next day with bright eyes and bushy tails. Jealousy and admiration. It's like having sex gives them a boost. Laughter from a woman that sounded mean. It's too bad that most men don't have his endurance, stamina, or skill. I've heard that you have trouble doing it for an hour, Aikatsu. A softer, longing sigh from a woman. I met one of his old lovers in Tea Country. She said he was the best man she'd ever had, that he could make her come with a casual touch, and she was a few years older and more experienced than him at the time. Really? What else did she say about him? That he ruined her for other guys in a big way. How do you know that she was being honest? I asked around. Most people in town were used to seeing Mariko-sama with 2 or even 3 lovers, but when Namikaze-senpai was with her, she was monogamous. A few weeks after they broke up, she went back to her old ways of having 2 or 3 guys around. A moment of hesitancy. You don't mean Mishimoto Mariko, do you? You idiot. Of course I mean Mishimoto Mariko. Why would I call any other Mariko-sama? But she is one of Kumos's biggest customers. She runs a lot of trade routes and owns a lot of merchant convoys and warehouses in every elemental country. Squeaked a much younger man. And for a woman her age, she looks great, a voice said with admiration. Her jugs are almost as big as the Godime Hokage. A slap on the back of the head. Don't be a sexist fool, Chiba. Mariko-sama didn't get her position and power by just being pretty. She had the drive, ambition, and determination to go up against much more experienced merchant barons when her husband died and her stepson killed himself in that racing accident. A man's voice with more thought. I'm surprised they're still friends because she probably taught Namikaze-sama everything he knows about bargaining and negotiating. Mariko-sama said she knew that whatever they had was only temporary. From the beginning, he made it clear that being a merchant baron wasn't his only goal and that he would eventually move on. What else did she say about him? Just that whoever got him would be one lucky lady. A group of sighs from women. It's too bad that he loves her so much. I don't know how they ever got together because she is so cold. If you've ever seen them together, it's like watching fire and ice. Naruto smiled as he took in Kumo's good energy, respect, and love, all of which were things he had longed for in Konoha. He was careful not to look at the people from Konoha. He knew them, but they were part of his past and didn't have anything to do with his future. He quickly made a jutsu to boost his voice, and then he spoke. Welcome to the 3rd stage of the Kumo's Chunin exams. I hope all of our candidates are rested and ready, but before we get to the one-on-one matches, there will be another culling, he said in a warm, soothing voice that turned firm. Of all the genin teams that passed, only 2 from each team will be allowed to move on. There was an immediate uproar, but Naruto was quick to stop it. You might say, why let us get to this point if you're just going to turn us down? I'll tell you the answer. Life doesn't seem fair. You will take on jobs where you have to make a choice. If you are the captain, you will have to decide which of your subordinates to kill so that the rest of the team can stay alive or finish the mission. If you are a Chunin, you may have to make the hardest choice of your entire shinobi career. How willing are you to die for your village? Are you willing to die? Risk capture or disgrace? Are you willing to pay the price for the good of your team and your village? These are hard questions, things you must think about, and things you will face. Today you are here to show the strength of your village to allies, enemies, and potential clients. Your future income depends on how good a show you put on. If you are not sure of your skills, If you know you are the weakest member of your team, are you willing to step back and let your teammates shine? To get the attention. Each cage looked at the third stage examiner, a young man, with new interest. The Mizukage murmured, he makes a very good point. Forcing the candidates to face and admit their fears and weaknesses is the price they have to pay to move up the ranks. The Tsukikage's eyes were full of admiration as he looked at the blonde. And the way it was announced. The candidates aren't ready. There will be a lot of pressure on them. They will have to admit their weaknesses right away. And the argument being countered by the need for personal sacrifice. I know many journalists who haven't learned that lesson yet. The Kazekage smirked. Naruto is like that. He has a lot of surprises and depths that I didn't expect. The Kusakage frowned and then looked at the Hokage and the Tsukikage. Namikaze, is there a connection? He trailed off, looking directly at the Raikage, who smiled. His father could have knocked me over with a feather when the boy walked up to me and said he wanted to sign up. The Raikage looked carefully at the Hokage and Fire Country's daimyos. Both of them had smiles that were bittersweet. The Hokage woke up and became more aware. Naruto was always like that. He was good at surprising people. She remembered a certain fact. He has a wife. The Raikage gave a nod. Yes. His wife is Akumo Kunoichi. The Hokage slowly nodded as he thought about what was being said. Is it possible to meet with him? The Raikage gave a grin. Oh, yes, definitely. But he won't be available until the end of the third stage. He's the examiner. Sakura almost broke the wooden rail with her fist. What does that baka think he is doing? She growled. Shikamaru replied softly as he tapped the ashes off his cigarette, he is testing them. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices. Wouldn't it be best for the candidates to find out ahead of time if they can handle getting the short end of the stick? But you can't give up on your team, cried Sakura. They laughed and turned away from the medic nin with pink hair. All of them were used to going on dangerous missions where they sometimes had to make sacrifices. Sometimes it was just for a teammate's general health, like when he got hurt while playing bait, but sometimes it was permanent, like when they wanted to keep people from catching them. Sasuke looked into the hole. Dobi, what have you been up to all this time? What have you done to be so respected and admired? Naruto waited and watched as the genins quickly got together in small groups. They didn't let the surprise stop them too much. Now, would they be willing to deal with the pain? To get the short end? They did. One by one, only 2 people from each team stepped forward. Most of the time, there were 2 shinobi, but sometimes there was a kunoichi and a shinobi. Naruto gave a soft smile and looked over to where the assistants were putting the information into the system that would make the electronic match-up. He looked quickly at each candidate. They were worried and wondered if they had made the right choice, but they were willing to take on the responsibility. That meant something good. Congratulations to both those who chose to step back and those who chose to step forward. You've made a hard choice, but it's just one of many you'll have to make as you get older and move up in your villages. Each matchup is now made by a computer 5 minutes before the duel, so all candidates must be there at all times. Today will be the end of 1 round. If we have time, 2. Tomorrow, the rest of the matches will be played. If you feel you cannot proceed due to injury, you can concede. There aren't many rules. Anything goes. The winner will be determined by a knockout, a surrender, or when I say so. The pairings were made, the genins were called, and the duels were fought. A few flashy jutsu or kekai genkai were used, but for the most part, it was a typical genin battle. Naruto was a strict referee who stepped in before anyone got hurt for good. As the morning and afternoon went on, the number of genins who made it to the semi-finals and finals was cut down. Their names were shown on a flashing diode board. Nobuden Sakama of Aiwa, Hayate Mitsuko of Konoha, Momochi Wakashi of Mizu, Tsunas Shumaru, Odama Kiyoshi of Kumo, Roshinta Zaraki of Kumo, Masume Reiko of Kumo. Naruto nodded, happy with the names that were still left. The semi-finals and finals will be held tomorrow. Those candidates who need to get better should go to the hospital. If you already have a medic nin, please use them. Then, in a swirl of air and a column of blue-red sparks, he was gone. Sasuke looked down at the heavily damaged stadium. Kumo had decided not to fix anything other than structural damage, so the candidates had to use the wreckage as part of their strategy, just like they would have to in real life. He went where? Aburame Shino said quietly, "It doesn't matter to us. Only one of my students made it to the semifinals and will be fighting the next day. Besides, we'll see him tomorrow. Also, Mitsuko will be fighting, and I want to talk to her about our plans for the fights tomorrow."
So this was it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.